Welcome to another edition of Small Talk for You. This morning I want to go through an issue in VisualWorks. It's not really an issue, something in VisualWorks you have to keep track of if you use BOSS, the Binary Object Streaming System. We use it a little bit at the project I'm on at work. I've used it extensively in Bottom Feeder and my blog server. So I'm familiar with what I'm going to go over right now, and that is versioning. I'll give you an example. I have a small class called person here. It's got a first name and a last name. What I'm going to do is I'm going to boss this out. So I'm going to use this code here, binary object storage, on a new file. So I create this stream, put an object storage thing on it, and then dump it out. So let's do that. It'll drop a file out. Now once I've got that out, I can do this, binary object storage on old, same thing in reverse, and then I just do next. I read it like any other stream, and I can get the object back. So let's go ahead and do that, and I'll store it in person2 so we can take a look at it and have it be independent. We'll go ahead and inspect that. And there it is. Same object came back. We'll look at first, look at last, very consistent. Here's the issue you can get into. Let's say that this thing evolves over time and say, well, we really need an email address on this guy. So we'll go ahead and hit that. We'll hit Control S. And now what we'll do is we'll try to read the old version of the object in. And you notice it blows up. It says, hey, I've got an incompatible version. Out there on disk, we've got this old version. Internally, we've got this new version. What do we do? Well, what I'm going to do is, rather than bore you by having you watch me write the code, I'll write the code and I'll come back and review it in just a moment. So here's what you need to do. Every time a boss object gets read in and the version that it finds on disk is not the same as the version it has in memory, what it's going to do is it's going to go ahead and call this method. If you don't implement your own version, you get a default, and that's where that exception came from. What you need to do is check explicitly for the version. Here there was no version, so I'm going to say if it's nil, go ahead and return this block. So this is the block that will handle migrating from that old version to the new version. Otherwise, just go to super. And you need to check explicitly for each possible version. As you move these forward in time, this method can get pretty long and hairy, and you can check for version 1, 2, 3, and it can get pretty complicated. I won't deny that. So you come in here to this method. Here is our block, and it's going to take one argument, the old object that's coming in, and I'm going to create a new instance. I'm going to get the size of that instance by asking how many instance variables it has and just getting the size. That tells me what problem solving I have. Say 2 instance variables in the old object, the new one has 3, and I need to make sure I migrate them from the right places to the right places. So I create an array. I replaced from 1 to the size minus 1 because this was simple. I added the variable at the end. You can imagine how this gets if I add instance variables to the middle, or if I have a deep hierarchy and I add them to the middle a couple of classes up. You can get into some pretty ugly things there. And here I just go ahead and change the class to that of the instance and then do a become to swap them out. And now if I go here and I haven't changed anything, I'm going to take my old file here, I'm going to do an inspect, and I get emails nil, but that's obvious because I didn't have that data in the old object, but my first and last name are handled. One other small thing. Let's go over here, and I've now given it a version. It's 1. This means that this thing knows it's version 1 of this object as opposed to the nil that's on disk. If you know you're going to be bossing things, it might be a good idea to give them a version right from the get-go, but you can do this going forward with just having the nil version be the initial one and go forward from there. Just bear in mind that you're going to have increasingly large numbers of versions of methods rather that look like this, and each one has to handle from what you have to what you have on disk to what you're coming into, and it's got to handle all the possible past iterations. So if you have a version 1 out on disk and you're version 10, you have to manage that. So you have to update these as you go along. And again, this can get fairly complicated. One thing you can do to kind of mitigate this, and it's an ugly solution, but it's one I've used, is if you find you're adapting these objects a lot and you don't want to write these methods, make one of your instance variables a dictionary and start adding pseudo instance variables as dictionary entries. Not a great solution. It's one that gets you past the problem though. So it's about it for today. Until next time, have fun with whatever small talk you're using.